All right, thank you all so much for joining us today. We apologize for the delay again, sincerely, but appreciate you joining us. I'm Carrie Lee. I'm the contracts manager with PHMC for PHLpreK. You're going to be joined also by my contracts coordinator, Theo Margulies, and also some folks from our PHMC accounting team, Ken Perry, who's the accounting manager, and also Siani Williams-Brown, who's the staff accountant. And then you'll also hear from Tanishai Campbell from Spark Quality Support Center to talk about some resources. So again, if you could please have your microphones muted, that would be great. You can type any questions in the question box and we'll address them along the way. This presentation is being recorded and the slides will be included in the provider update as well. So what we're here to do today is to review fiscal expectations for this program year and deliverables that are outlined in your PHLpreK contract. We're also going to provide information on the financial systems and controls PHLpreK providers need to have in place to support reporting requirements and to provide resources so you can get the help now if you need it. Okay. So we'll do an overview of the fiscal expectations. We'll talk about expense reporting, desk reviews, and audits. And then we'll talk about the financial management systems and then the resources as well. So first, in terms of fiscal expectations, so PHLpreK providers are expected to spend city funding appropriately with what's outlined in your PHLpreK contract. Each provider needs to report out at 3 points in the year. So that's the first, you all should have done that right by now, submitted your line item budget with exhibits, and that's telling us how you're going to be spending city funding and that you'll be spending it on allowable expenses. Then there are 2 other points you need to report out, one at the middle of the year and then at the end of the year as well. And we'll go through what that looks like as well. You'll also need to pay staff according to the city's 21st century minimum wage benefit, which is at $16.35 in FY25 this program year. There are some exemptions if you have 5 or fewer employees, or if you're a nonprofit with a contract of less than $100,000. And if you're unable to pay this, the requirement, you'll need to submit a waiver directly to the city. And if you need to do so, please contact us. We'll give you the form. And then when you're done, we'll submit it for you. As a PHLpreK provider, you'll also need to use best practices in managing your finances. It's recommended that providers seek professional accounting services to ensure adherence to the terms of the PHLpreK contract and to accepted principles of accounting. This can range from hiring a bookkeeper to selecting a certified public accountant. You also need to make financial books available for audit if requested and maintain records for 5 years after the final payment is made under your PHLpreK contract and until all pending matters are closed. And then you'll make your records available if requested. You'll also need to comply with tax law and regulations that's city, state, and federal. We monitor monthly your city compliance, tax compliance monthly, and we'll send notices to providers that are non-compliant. If you do get one of those notices, you'll reach out to the City of Philadelphia Department of Revenue, and all this information will be in the notice if you are non-compliant. But then you'll reach out to the city, make sure you identify yourself as a PHLpreK provider, provide information about your business name and entity ID number, whether it's an EIN or social security number. After you get that resolved, then you'll send us the compliance certificate to the PHLpreK inbox, and then you will be compliant again. So just remember when you are reporting out on your PHLpreK doing your fiscal reporting requirements, you are going to be required to detail PHLpreK revenue and expenses separately from your other funding streams. So if you have accounting software, you can make this differentiation by tagging PHLpreK expenses as they come in, so you can easily report on them throughout the year. Here's a list, these will be in your contract as well, of allowable and unallowable expenses. So in terms of allowable expenses, these are childcare related expenditures, which includes expenses that support blended classrooms. And then also costs of membership in business, technical, and professional organizations. Unallowable expenses will be the purchase of land, new construction, or doing major renovations. So if you're expanding, hoping to get PHLpreK slots and want to use that money for that, that would be unallowable. The purchase of gift cards, money orders, gift certificates, travel checks, or any other comparable legal tender, that's unallowable. Also the purchase of alcohol, purchase or lease of vehicles, payment towards staff or entertainment, including amusement, diversion, social activities, any costs directly associated with those costs, such as like tickets for sporting events, meals, lodging, those types of things that are not related to professional development events. Also unallowable is the cost of membership in civic and community and social organizations. And then also the purchase of any secondhand or used items, including but not limited to those from individuals, yard sales, and auctions. All right, so here is what the reporting schedule looks like. So for all providers, we'll need to complete a mid-year expense report. We usually contact you in December about that, and then it will be due in February 2025. For at the end of the year reporting for providers with $300,000 that are receiving $300,000 or less by legal entity, there are two options that may happen. So one is a desk review. So we choose a 10% sample of providers that are receiving $300,000 or less, or those with identified fiscal concerns. So that's usually around 20-ish providers a year will be chosen for desk reviews. We'll contact you in July, at the end of the FY25 fiscal year, July 2025, and then you will need to do submissions by August. The other option, if you're not one of those 20 or so providers chosen for a desk review that are making that receive $300,000 or less, you'll be expected to submit a year-end expense report. We'll contact you around that same timing at the end of the fiscal year, July 2025, and those will be due on August 2025, around August 2025. So now I'm going to pass it to Theo, who will take you through mid-year and year-end expense reports.
Thanks, Carrie. So yes, I will be going through mid and year-end expense reports, and I will also be showing the expense report templates and going over how to complete that as well. So for the mid and year-end expense report requirements, providers are expected to complete the template provided by PHMC. This includes tabs to provide detailed reporting for your line item expenses. And the providers or your internal fiscal staff or external fiscal experts, if applicable, would be the ones to fill out these expense reports. So you should develop a line item budget to show how you intend to spend city funding appropriately, which you all have submitted as part of your exhibits. You should be checking your PHLpreK expenses monthly to review how it is matching up with your line item budget. There are many reasons why actual spending might differ from your line item budget. And in your expense report, you will need to clearly justify the reason in the expense reporting.
Can I ask a question, or can I say something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
That the information you list on your expenditure report should agree with your accounting records. In other words, if you your general ledger. You should be able to take those numbers straight out of your general ledger and agree it and drop it into your report.
Yeah. Yeah, so you should report on how you spent PHL pre-K funds at the middle and end of the PHL pre-K school year, showing how your actual spending aligns with your line item budget. And as Ken said, you should be tracking expenses in accounting software, and you should separate PHL pre-K expenses from other funding streams. And when you report on your mid and end of year expenses, this should come directly from your general ledger generated from your accounting software. So now we're going to go over the template. So all providers should have an approved line item budget that will be in your PHL pre-K contract. You will use that template to start tracking your PHL pre-K expenses regularly to be able to report out on your mid-year expense report. Make sure that your accounting system is up to date to track your PHL pre-K revenue and expenses separate from your other funding streams. And expenses should be taken from your general ledger that you pull from your accounting software. So now I'm going to share my screen and I will go over the template. Okay, so this is the template. So the first tab of this is the line item budget. So this is what you all completed for your exhibits. And this year we combined the line item budget and your expense report. So this first tab is the line item budget. And this is just an example. I just put numbers in here for your approved budget amount. And then what you put for your line items in your line item budget will now transfer over into your expense report in column B. So you will not have to fill this out. This will already be filled out for you from what you put in your line item budget. And so you'll complete this top section, the site name, the time frame. So if it's the mid-year, you'll select mid-year. If it's the year end, you will select year end. You'll put the date. And then your total budget amount will also come over from your line item budget. So if you're doing the mid-year, you will put your individual expenses in these expense tabs. So there's program staff expenses, program other expenses, occupancy expenses, and other expenses. So you'll go into each tab and you will put in your individual expenses for each category. So for teacher salary, you will list your lead teachers, and then you'll choose from the drop down your individual expenses. And so if we just put a number in here, then it automatically populates in your expense report summary tab. So we put $20,000 in teacher salary, that automatically populates. And then in column D, that will be your variance percentage. So if it's over 10% or more than negative 10%, you will need to add a justification in column G. And I'll be going over on the next slide the allowable justifications as well. So you'll do that for each expense. You'll go through each tab and you will pick from the drop down your individual expenses, and then those will automatically add into column C. So you don't add anything in here. This just calculates based on what you put in each expense tab. And then the variance also automatically populates. And again, if it's greater than 10% or more than negative 10% difference between your budget amount and what you have in your expenses, then you'll need a detailed justification. You'll also in column H be putting your allocation methods. So this is a drop down and you can choose how you allocate. For that expense, it would be children, space, time, or other. And then you'll also put the allocation percentage. There's also instructions and a video tutorial here. The instructions just list each section and what needs to go in that section. And there's also a video tutorial that goes through exactly how to fill it out as well. I think Siani has raised her hand. Do you want to say something, Siani?
Yes, I'm sorry. For the drop down in selection H, if you do press other and then insert your allocation percentage, if you could just in column G state what the other is so we know as well. Just in case if anyone does use that, they don't use all the options above. If you're going to use other, please let us know what the other allocation method is, like the title or how you're going to proceed doing it.
Everybody has, when it gets to mid-year expense reporting time or even year-end expense reporting time, if anybody has any questions, you are welcome to email the PHLpreK inbox. I'm happy to get on a Zoom or to call you, and we can go through the template one-on-one too. Okay, stop sharing screen now. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to go over different types of justifications. So these are good examples and bad and insufficient examples for justifications. So for good examples would be if it was a benefits column, employee benefits were less than anticipated due to inability to hire additional staff. Another good example is for program supplies. We had leftover stock from the previous year and lower enrollment than expected. For insurance, you could say that the cost increased by 15%. And for trainings, you could say that trainings were done online, so the costs were minimal. Insufficient examples would be just listing the line item category. So for teacher salary, you just wrote teacher salary. That's not enough information. Or vague statements that don't explain why there is a difference. So if you just said actual costs are greater than anticipated, or that you reallocated it to another line item, that's okay if you reallocate it, or it's, if you had a training that maybe got canceled and so you wanted to move that, that's fine. You just have to tell us where you moved it to. As I said before, there are instructions and a video tutorial. Those are linked here, and they're also linked directly in the template as well. As a reminder, the template was adjusted from last year, so the line item and expense reporting forms are now one form. We've combined them. Several line items have changed for clarity, and we did create an expense line item resource to provide guidance and examples of costs that may be under line items. And there, as I said before, there is assistance on how to complete the template. You're welcome to email the inbox as well if you have any questions. All right, so now I'm going to throw it over to finance, and they're going to talk about the next steps after you submit your expense reports.
Hi, and thank you. If I sound I'm not feeling real well today, so my voice may crack a few times during this. And I apologize for that up front. I'm Ken Perry, and I'm an audit. It's a very strange title. For lack of a better term, it's an audit manager in Fiscal, and I primarily work with FY25, but I also work with some others, and you will also be hearing from my colleague, Siani, in a few minutes as well. What happens after providers submit their fiscal reviews? For mid-year reviews, what happens is Ms. Brown will go through this in a little bit more detail, I think, but we look over all of the information that you provide, and then we look at it for reasonableness and for acceptable purposes. As Theo pointed out, there are things that are permitted and things that are not permitted per your contract. That is our criteria for judging everything. Fortunately, this year, since the budget line will already be input, we will take that as gospel, but we will be looking for what is in your actual line, ensuring that the information in the individual tabs correspond to what's on the cover sheet and the quality of the information that you give us as far as how those expenses were determined. As I indicated earlier, it's crucial that your information come from your accounting records, from your general ledger, because that is, for lack of a better term, the gospel. Anybody that's going to review you is going to look and say, these are the expenses that you incurred, and this is what you reported to us. And the other thing is that the pre-K program wants to ensure that they are paying their fair share, not less, not more, which is why we talk about the allocation methods. When you guys, let's assume that you have 3 different types or lines of business. Let's say that you had Head Start children, you had pre-K children, and then you had private pay. And let's just say that you had 15 children total, and each program had 3. We would expect to cover a third of the expenses unless you can specifically point to where only the Philly pre-K children were benefiting from an expense. So it's very important that you think about how you're going to charge us for what we are responsible for. Does that make sense to everyone? Since we can't hear, we'll move on to the next one. Next screen, please. Am I in control of this on how to move forward? Thank you. Okay, we can go to desk reviews. Okay, some desk reviews they're reporting requirements. In order for us to do a desk review, we need for you to provide a general ledger. If you have an automated software package, generating a detailed general ledger is not hard. There are very simple instructions. If you have trouble with it, you can make a call to us and we can talk you through how to get it out. Who completes the fiscal review, reporting requirements, the providers, and then Siani and I actually look at the information you provide, and then we make our assessments from there.
And just as a reminder for desk reviews, this only applies to a 10% sample of the PHLpreK providers that are making receive $300,000 or less by legal entity of PHLpreK funds. So this 10% sample is probably about 20 providers or so that we choose at the end of the fiscal year. So you will be notified if you need to turn in a desk review, but we will want to make sure that everybody's aware of what happens during a desk review.
Yes, and those 20 are randomly selected. And for those who might be interested, if you're above 300,000, there are specific audit requirements where CPAs have to get involved and do annual reports for those. So that we just have.
And we'll go into the next section after the desk reviews.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Next, please. Desk reviews, fiscal documents requested. We've already told you that the general ledger is required. And remember that everything that you input into your general ledger should be backed up by invoices or some other documentation. Bank accounts and credit card reconciliations, because the reality is cash and credit are the ways that people can lose track of their expenditures, and we want to make sure that people are overseeing that. Check registers, same thing. Anything that controls cash, we want to make sure there are adequate controls over that. Petty cash, these are ways that can drain an organization of their operating capital with, it's just so easy to lose track, and it can lead to all kinds of problems, not just for us with PHMC and the city in trying to control expenses, but you as a business owner need to know these things as well. We will ask for income statements and balance sheets. Those come straight out of your accounting software. It's automatically being calculated. your unemployment compensation. We want to make sure that our assets and our people are adequately protected. Tax forms, the 941, ensuring that all of the participants in the program are in fact paying their taxes in a timely manner. Payroll, we're ensuring that people are being paid properly, a fair and living wage. Ensuring, again, insurance is the same sort of thing. We just want to make sure that our assets are, and that PHMC for that matter, are adequately protected against casualty loss. As far as gift cards, distributions, and use, there's very specific wording in your contracts on the use of gift cards. And so we want to make sure that those things are being adhered to. The reason we ask for employees who have left in the past couple of years is to make sure that you didn't forget to take somebody off payroll and the like. Accounting policies, that does a couple of things. It ensures that there is consistency in your reporting and collection of accounting data. Conflict of interest, making sure that, I think that kind of speaks for itself. And the minimum wage is tied directly to that payroll summary sheet that we're requesting. Next. This is a general ledger. This is like an outrageously clean general ledger. This is the kind of stuff that we look for. And if you were doing textbook, you'd see, most of you guys are not going to be big enough to use batch controls, but you're going to want to know what date a transaction happened, what the transaction was, and the debits and the credits, which I know about as interesting as watching paint dry, but it does serve a very important purpose. The thing that I would stress about your general ledger is every single entry in your general ledger should have a supporting document to back it up. Your contract requires that you have all of the documentation and paperwork and reports that relate to a program year, and you keep it for 5 years. When we request information, this is what we're looking for. And then when we make our selection of transactions, we're going to take lines directly out of this. And so you should be able to give us the invoice or the contract or whatever that goes along with that line. Can we go to the next one, please? Best practices. Businesses and personal banking and credit card numbers should be separate. You don't want to commingle your private personal bank account with your business account, because all of a sudden it loses its integrity and it becomes very difficult for you to document things along the way. As I've said before, every transaction has to have a receipt or some sort of supporting document. And cash transactions should be kept to a minimum. I know it's very easy for us to just say, here, take the 50 out of the drawer and give it to the person. It makes it difficult for you to track everything. If you write it down, though it may be a little bit slower, in the long run, you're going to have a record of every single thing. It makes it easier to review. It makes it much easier for you to record your taxes, and also will allow you to have a clear idea when you get ready to budget going forward. And it gives you that sort of feeling that you really know the details of your business. Next, please. A written set of accounting policies. This helps you in a lot of ways. One, it allows people, if somebody comes in and wants to do a review, You hand it off, say, this is how we handle our accounting. This is how we handle our financial stuff. The other thing that comes from this is your ability to, if something happens and you have to change bookkeepers or you grow, now all of a sudden you can bring in new people and bring them up to speed for your financial management quickly. And I'm sorry, I should have left that for Siani. Siani, you want to pick up from there?
Yes.
I'm
So,
sorry.
okay, it's no problem. I'm gonna start from the beginning. But for the desk reviews, PHMC includes verifying that pre-K expenses are clearly identified. So in layman's terms, that means we would like for you to separate your pre-K expenses from your daily expenses in your general ledger and see how you allocate them. May it be a specific code or a fund number, or if you use a percentage based on students. Next, we have selecting a sample transaction and requesting supporting documentation from the provider to check for correctness and accuracy and priority. So with this process, when we review your general ledger and check, we mostly check for first unallowable expenses. Next, we select 50 individual transactions at random. During this process, we ask that you submit the documentation to support each transaction, whether that be a receipt, invoice, bank statement, payroll summary, or photocopy of a check receipt. This is to ensure that you are filing and upkeeping your records properly. The contract states that you must keep a record of all PHL expenses for up to 7 years. Next, we have verifying that the provider has an appropriate insurance and is up to date on their taxes. So this step is pretty straightforward. We just want you to ensure that you're in good standing with your insurance and taxes. We just want to double check that you are current and you don't owe an outrageous amount back taxes. We would also like to confirm that you have the necessary coverage as stated in the contract and that you were fully insured throughout the entire school year. We also have verifying procedures around expenditures, allocations, payroll, accounts payable, credit cards, petty cash, gift cards, accounting policy and procedures, and conflict of interest. So this pretty much means with this step, we just want to ensure that everything you state in your written procedures, you are actually practicing. So if that is pertaining to your allocations, that you are actually allocating based on the allocation method that you have stated that you use. Your payroll is in good standing, stating that if you say that you pay this a certain amount and you pay monthly or you pay weekly, that should show up in your general ledger as well. If you use credit cards, things like that, if you buy gift cards, how do you distribute them, things like that. And your policy and procedures are clear and standard, and also your conflict of interest is being practiced as well. So we don't want people just writing up a bunch of words and saying, I do X, Y, and Z, and not actually following through with it during their daily practices. Finally, we have a corrective action or additional physical monitoring may be recommended based on reviews. So that's pretty much if we go through the entire process and you might just need an extra hand or clarification, or if we give you suggestions back on how you can improve, we will issue a corrective action plan where we will follow up with you just to ensure that you are moving forward in the right direction. Next slide.
I guess I take this one, I think.
Sure.
Yeah, this is what I was alluding to earlier, that different agencies, based on the kind of funding they're getting, they need a different type of audit. As you can see, this starts at 300,000, which is why we do desk reviews randomly of everybody under 300,000. But your counterparts that are getting $300,000 of city money they have to get a CPA to do a more detailed procedure. At 500,000, there becomes a very complex audit that has to be done by a CPA. And if you get more than $750,000 of federal dollars, There's a really long and involved audit that goes along. This information, while it doesn't impact you directly, I know quite a few of you are growing and becoming major players, for lack of a better term, in the landscape of Philly pre-K. But this is one of the things that you'll have to concern yourself with as you grow, and if you start to earn more money through the Philly pre-K system. Next, please. What are external review reporting requirements? I think this is pretty much the same thing I just said, so I think we can move to the next one. I'm sorry, boy, I'm getting old. Who completes well, as I said before, CPAs are doing this, and this is just a simple idea of the schedule on when those reports are going to be due.
So you'll be asked for the audit to report on the fiscal year, right? And so that fiscal year, it could be the calendar year. It should align with how you keep your books and how you report on your taxes. So, right, Ken, is there anything else you wanted to add there?
Your CPA will do if in fact you have a
Damn, I'll be back. Put your paper in your.
Somebody said something and I want to hear their question. Did someone say something?
I think it was just some feedback.
Okay. Now, yeah, your fiscal year will drive when your audits are due. That is not the case for desk reviews, however. Next. Agreed upon procedures is just a type of for lack of a better term, it's a mini audit, but it still has to be done by a CPA. And oh yeah, I'm not sure how long that's going to stay in, but all of your CPA type reviews must be received by October 30th currently of the current fiscal year.
And these is again, for folks that are receiving over $300,000 by a legal entity. You're usually asked around to submit a form that tells us the status of your audit. So those folks that are having to do audits for the previous fiscal year, those were just due September 30th. So in that form, you would request either an extension if needed, or you tell us that you would be submitting on time by October 30th.
I think we just talked about this.
So again, you can request an extension for 90 days. You need to include a compelling reason with that, and then also your CPA engagement letter. Those all go to the Office of Children and Families for approval. And if you are not able to submit by the end of the year for that, when that reporting year is, a non-compliance notice will be sent, and then the auditor will need to complete a form about the status of the audit.
Next. I'm kind of like Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. Next slide, please.
So I think we do want to say that what your review would actually look at for the
are you saying when I look at the reports, what am I looking at?
After the provider submits, what you would be looking
okay
for.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. What I look at when I review those reports is I look at the opinion that's provided by the auditor. I look, there should be a schedule that lists just the Philly pre-K expenditures. And that's about it. Oh, the other thing is I look for any kind of findings or weaknesses that the CPA has determined need to be reported. And then after that happens, then we're looking for what are you going, or what's the agency going to do in order to correct the findings that were listed. Again, this doesn't happen for agencies that are under 300,000, but it's a big deal to see how the findings are rectified. It's not just something, they're not saying it just for their, just to hear themselves talk. These are things that will lead to you being able to manage your business better and to safeguard our assets, or the monies that we're providing to run the program. If there are material misrepresentations, there has to be an action plan and timetable on when those things will be corrected. Does that make sense to everybody? I guess so.
And the external reviews, again, just to reiterate, are for those that are receive over $300,000 in PHLpreK funding by legal entities. So those are the ones that need to submit the external audits. I think I've tried to answer most of the questions along the way. Raphael, I will follow up with you on that specific expense.
Was that
We
the
had
question
someone-
about the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's see, so I'm not sure which slide someone, Miss Alana, had asked to go back to a particular slide. I'm not sure which one you are referring to, but all the slides and the recording will be in the provider update. So you can take a look and have them for review then.
Thank you.
Of course. Someone was asking about insurance. Insurance reporting requirements were detailed at the exhibits training, and your insurance certificate should be submitted already as an exhibit that will go in your PHLpreK contract. If you have not started on that yet, you'll need to do that as soon as possible, and I can send you information on that as well. And then I just mentioned about the due date for over 300 who receives through external audits. And I think that's it. So we can move on to the next section. Kenan or Siani will take this section about financial management best practices.
Okay. Yeah, there's some things that are just kind of common, and it's so easy not to know it, but I've seen enough things now to know what works really well and what you should strive for. I'll just take these in order. Having a financial management system that allows you to track revenue and expenses and produce financial reports. A lot of time, way back in the day when I started in accounting, everything was written down by hand, and then people would have to make 5 million little paper copies. Nowadays, with the advent of QuickBooks and the like, finding a system that will allow you to track different types of income and keep track of what you bought. It allows you to reconcile your bank statement within the system. It just makes sense, and it makes life a lot easier. We have alluded to this earlier, having a written policy and procedure for how you handle accounting. Something that will say when bills come in, the secretary will pick them up and sort them and code them, and then the manager will look them over and agree to what is going to be paid when. This way, everybody knows what their role in the fiscal system is, and that therefore, if somebody has to leave or get sick or whatever, whenever you bring in your next person, they don't have to go through as steep a learning curve. You can give them your manual and say, this is what we're doing, and your role is right here. Complying with city and state and federal taxes. You want to make sure that you're on top of that. We've all heard the nightmares of people who didn't pay their taxes on time, and all of a sudden the business was in all kinds of trouble. You want to have that listed in your accounting policy and make sure you follow it rigorously. Accrual basis. This gets confusing for the lay people, but accruing says that even though I haven't paid the cash out, great example is payroll. At the end of the month, the month ends on Wednesday. Payday is going to be on Friday. You want to recognize those extra 2 days because you want to push those into whatever you're going to bill us for, so you get it in on a monthly basis. It's best practices. It is actually required per your contract. However, I do also understand that on very small agencies, that might be a bit much. So if in fact you're going to list things just as you pay it, you just have to make sure that everybody knows it, including us, so we can go move there. And allocations, I think we talked about this earlier, that making that you have processes in place to make sure that each program pays for what the expenses that relate to them and them only. I talked about the situation where say rent, you have 15 kids, 1/3 of the rent should probably be applied to FY25. And I think that's all I have to say about that. Financial management systems. This goes back to my comments about using QuickBooks or FreshWave or whatever your automated system may be. Manual systems are, they can be done in today's environment, not really worth the hassle. It's too easy for people to transpose numbers, things get out of balance, and it makes it very difficult to review. So again, we highly recommend that you get accounting software and get training on how to use it. Next.
And so the last piece of this slide is just recommendations for revenue and expense tracking. So just making sure you're consistent in the categories you're using to code transactions. You reconcile transaction monthly. And then of course, as Ken was talking about before, keeping all those receipts and other supporting documentation.
Yeah, and that's kind of a given, and it also goes to you can set up in these accounting packages the ability to have track you might actually set it up. Company 1 is FY25. Company 2 is my Head Start program. Company 3 are my private pay people, and therefore your expenses can then be allocated appropriately. These are kind of givens. You may not be putting out a general ledger every month, but you should as a business owner, you should probably generate an income statement or a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet and a cash flow statement monthly, because that's one of the things that will make sure that you see all of your assets and liabilities. It'll tell you how much money you're making, whether you made money or not, and ensuring that you see the money, the cash come in. Just because you recognize the revenue, and if somebody's late paying you, this is how you find that out quickly.
All right, thanks, Ken. So we're gonna move on to the resources section right now. Let's see. Okay, so now, what we'll talk about, engaging with external financial experts. So if you need to find a CPA, the Pennsylvania Institute of Certified Public Accountants has a CPA locator. So you can, we'll have the link in there in the follow-up slides for you to take a look at. Just make sure you're interviewing the candidates to ensure they have the qualifications and can complete PHLpreK audit requirements by the deadlines. We have a guide as well on selecting an accountant that is going to be shared in this, the link is shared in this slide deck. And now I will pass it to Tanny Shai Campbell from Spark to talk about their resources.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Tanny Shai Campbell from the QSC, Spark QSC, and my role is the business support specialist. And we have a variety of business trainings that we offer on our, you can find those trainings on our Spark website, which will also be provided to you in the slide deck when Carrie gives that information out, as well as other additional trainings that we offer through the Spark Quality Center. My role is to specifically support providers in their business practices. And so we've created PDs on business practices, how to create and write policies and procedures. Carrie mentioned and Ken about accounting policies and procedures. We have PDs offering how to create that accounting policies and procedures. And so just a wealth of resources on our website. We have guides on allocation. We have webinars that we provide on the website, on different ways to allocate and different methods. And so I encourage you to check out our website. Also, you can be in touch with your coach for resources, or you can contact me as well. We have a PD coming up on the calendar, coming up on why record keeping is so important, and EC business, which talks about different accounting systems.
Nene?
I'm sorry.
I think there's just some feedback from.
Oh, okay.
I'll just mute them. You can go ahead.
Yes, and so which talks about various different types of accounting systems that you can use in order to strengthen your record keeping practices, and that's pretty much it for us. But I will really encourage that you check out our website. It's a wealth of information, as I mentioned, on different business practices and how to strengthen your financial management. I know allocation is a big topic. And so, again, we have a webinar on allocation that was created by Civitas, as well as a guide on different methods of allocation. And that is it. And if you need additional support from me, you can contact your coach, your Sparks coach, and she or he can connect you with me on getting more technical assistance, individualized TA. That's it.
Great, thanks so much, Tanny Shai. So also Children's Village has business trainings as well that we'll have that link in the recording, the slides for you to check out. There are also some, PHMC has some EC business support resources, like templates and tools that you can check out. And then also Shared Source PA, they have some tools and resources as well. You need to get a membership, but it's free. So, but we'll have all of these links in the slides that we'll send out with the provider update along with the recording as well. Someone had a specific comment about their QuickBooks, and we'll follow up with you, Mercedes. There is a question, maybe Ken can answer this one. If if a provider has multiple sites, should the funds be in one account or separate?
That is really a management call. It probably, I happen to like to segregate things. I like decentralized systems. So I like everybody to have their own individual, but if everybody has one big pot that's just for our for the program for one big corporation, that would be fine. I will tell you why I like the segregated model is that way. If I'm at site A, I now know all the expenditures for site A is this. And if I need to know whether or not they have enough cash, it's there in one account. A lot of organizations just have one big account, and then they just rely on the information in their general ledger to tell them how much belongs to program A and how much belongs to site B, so on and so forth. So it is your call as a business owner, but you either have to do it by account or do it and just make sure that you're really on top of everything in your general ledger. Ideally, you have, the idea is that your general ledger is accurate enough to know everything, and you can generate reports right out of your accounting system. Hopefully that adequately answered the question.
And so for some of the fiscal reporting, so if you are turning in all providers need to turn in the mid-year, that will be by site though. So just, you need to easily be able to report by site.
Good point.
Okay, well, I think that's all of our questions. Please, but if you have any, as you review this along the way, if you do have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out, especially around the mid-year or the year end if you're completing those templates and need assistance with that. If you're having trouble with a template, please reach out to us. We can provide you with technical assistance on that. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, these slides and recording will be in the provider update, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.